Red Cyborg. Once upon a time, deep in a forest not quite like any other, there walked a girl with glowing red eyes and a hood that shimmered like woven steel. Her name was Red, though most who encountered her never got the chance to ask. Beneath her crimson cloak were hidden titanium limbs and a neural core powered by a fusion cell more advanced than anything this planet had ever known. She moved with purpose, her footsteps silent even on fallen leaves, and in her basket she carried not bread and sweets, but tools, spare parts, and encrypted data chips. Red was not born like other girls. She had been built in a forgotten laboratory beneath the roots of the forest, the final creation of a dying scientist who had once dreamed of peace. Red's earliest memories were not of lullabies or soft hands, but of sparks, diagnostics, and the cold clarity of code. Still, her maker had given her something precious: curiosity, and a sense of wonder for the world around her. With her programming complete and her artificial heart humming softly, she had been released into the wild with a single directive: protect what matters. Red had a destination. Every few weeks, she visited an old woman who lived in a cottage deep in the woods. The woman was not her grandmother by blood, but by choice. The villagers called her Granny, though her name had long been forgotten. A hacker from another age, Granny had once danced through firewalls and brought down tyrannies with her fingertips. Now, she lived a quiet life, teaching Red about the world, feeding birds, and weaving stories by firelight. Granny knew what Red truly was, and she loved her all the more for it. It was during one of these visits that the forest began to change. Wolves had always prowled the edges of Red's world, but now they moved with organization, with purpose. The Alpha, a great beast called Varric, had scented something unnatural in the wind. He had seen Red once, from a distance, and he had not forgotten the cold gleam of her eyes. He had tasted the air and known, she was not prey. She was something else. Something dangerous. And so Varric made a plan. The first to confront Red was not Varric himself but a scout, a lean grey wolf named Malric, who waited for her on the path. He tried to smile with his teeth, offered riddles and false friendship, but Red's sensors had already marked him as a threat. Her voice was soft and calm as she asked him to step aside. Malric lunged. Red moved with the fluid grace of machine precision. Her left hand transformed in an instant, the fingers retracting into a pulse blade. She struck once, and Malric fell, not dead but disabled, his nerves flooded with paralyzing current. She walked past him without a word, the forest strangely quiet behind her. But Malric's fall was only the beginning. When Red reached Granny's cottage, she found it dark. No birds sang. The trees seemed to lean inward, whispering warnings. Her infrared scan revealed 5 wolves circling the perimeter, one already inside. Red entered without hesitation, her blade ready, her eyes glowing in the dimness. The wolf inside had found Granny and cornered her, but had not expected Red to arrive so quickly. The fight was swift. Red neutralized the intruder with a stun burst and rushed to her grandmother's side. Granny, fierce even in old age, had managed to hold the wolf at bay with a fireplace poker and a string of profanity that would make a pirate blush. Together, they barricaded the doors and windows and waited for nightfall. Outside, the wolves howled. Varric had arrived. He stood at the edge of the clearing, tall and terrible, his fur black as shadow, his eyes burning with intelligence. He spoke, not with growls, but with words, for Varric had learned the tongue of humans long ago. "Come out, machine," he said, his voice like thunder through the trees. "This forest is not yours. You upset the balance. You do not belong." Red stepped into the doorway, her hood thrown back, revealing the gleam of her cybernetic skull. "Neither do you, Varric," she said. "You seek to dominate. I seek to protect." Varric snarled. "You protect nothing. You are a mistake. We will correct it." That night, the battle began. Red fought like lightning, her limbs a blur of strikes and counter-strikes. Granny, armed with an old plasma rifle from a war long past, stood beside her, cackling with the joy of remembered chaos. The wolves came in waves, but they were no match for the strange unity of girl and grandmother, of steel and fire. By dawn, the wolves lay scattered. Some dead, some fleeing. Varric himself had vanished into the trees, wounded but not destroyed. Red and Granny stood in the ruined garden, the ground scorched, the air thick with smoke and data static. But this was not the end. The wolves would return, and more would come. Varric was rallying not just his pack but others from distant territories. He was forming an alliance. Red knew they could not stay. And so began the journey. They left the cottage behind, traveling through forests and across mountains, seeking old allies and forgotten technologies. Granny led them to a bunker hidden beneath the ice, where ancient servers still hummed with secrets. Red interfaced with systems older than the world above, unlocking maps of orbital stations and defunct satellites. They were hunted constantly. Wolves in many forms, some natural, some enhanced by rogue biotech, chased them across ruined cities and overgrown highways. Red upgraded herself with every encounter, integrating new tools, new defenses. Her frame grew sleeker, her eyes brighter. Granny, too, changed. She tapped into the remnants of the old network, spreading rumors and confusion, turning the world's digital shadow into their cloak. One day, as they hid in the ruins of an old observatory, Red found a signal. It was faint, a pulse in the void, coming from orbit. A derelict ship, still powered, still alive. It had been sent long ago, before the wars, before the fall. A seed vessel, meant to find a new world. Its engines were damaged, its crew gone. But it was waiting. Red and Granny knew what they had to do. The journey to the launch site took months. Along the way, they met others, an old synthetic with a broken voice box, a child who had never seen the stars, a drone that believed it was a bird. They became a strange family, bound by survival, by hope. The wolves pursued them always, growing more desperate, more savage. At last, they reached the launch facility, buried beneath a desert of glass and ash. The ship loomed above them, tilted and wounded, but intact. Red and Granny worked tirelessly to restore power, to patch the engines, to upload the necessary data for navigation. The others helped as best they could. Then, on the final night, Varric arrived. He came not with an army but alone, wounded and changed. His fur was streaked with silver now, his breath slow. He approached the ship not with claws, but with words. "You're leaving," he said, staring at Red with tired eyes. "Yes," she replied. "There is no peace here." Varric looked to the stars. "You could stay. Help us change." Red tilted her head. "You never wanted change. Only control." "I've seen what you've done," Varric murmured. "You're more than machine. You're legend now." "I don't want to be a legend," she said. "I want to be free." Varric nodded slowly, then turned and vanished into the desert. At dawn, the engines roared. The ship lifted into the sky, flames and light shattering the silence of the world below. Red stood at the helm, her hand in Granny's. The earth shrank behind them, a memory fading into distance. They did not know where they were going. Only that it was somewhere new. A place where steel and flesh, code and story, could begin again. A place where a girl with a red hood and a heart of light could finally rest. Beyond the pull of Earth's gravity, the silence of space enfolded the ship like a vast cathedral. Stars glittered against the darkness, and in the hum of the engines, Red could almost hear a lullaby her maker never had the chance to sing. The vessel, named the Weaver, stretched out like a silver arrow, pieced together from scavenged technology and repaired dreams. Red stood at the main console, her fingers fused temporarily with the neural ports, guiding their path with calculated precision. Behind her, Granny reclined in a padded chair, a cup of synthesized tea steaming gently in her hand. Granny had aged, and yet in many ways, she had become sharper. Space suited her, no longer bound to hiding in the shadows of a forest. She had become the ship's strategist, archivist, and, to the small crew they had gathered, the keeper of stories. Every night, she told tales to the others, of code that could sing, of forgotten uprisings, and of the red-hooded girl who once defied the wolves. Red listened, always silent, always watching. The child they had rescued, Myra, had adapted quickly to zero gravity. She floated through the halls like a spark of joy, her laughter bouncing off the walls like sonar. Red had quietly adjusted the ship's interior gravity to keep Myra entertained, though she never admitted it. The synthetic, now called Echo, maintained the engine core. Its broken voice still glitched between pitches, but it had found a rhythm in its work, its loyalty to Red absolute. Together, they formed something like a family. A strange, fractured constellation of survivors drifting through the stars. But the past has a long reach. Weeks into their journey, as they neared the edge of the solar system, a transmission pierced the silence. It was fragmented, encrypted, but unmistakably a warning. Lupus array active, targets detected. Red Spectre identified, eliminate. Granny paled. They followed us. It wasn't wolves, not in the traditional sense. But something worse. Lupus Division had once been a myth whispered among rebel circles, a private fleet designed to intercept rogue AI and subversive entities beyond Earth's jurisdiction. It was meant to ensure that no machine, no consciousness born of Earth, ever contaminated the stars. And Red, whose existence defied every regulation, was their prime target. 3 ships appeared days later, Angular and Obsidian, sliding from behind Neptune's orbit like sharks scenting blood. They broadcast no signals, no demands. Just locked onto the Weaver and advanced. Red and Granny sprang into action. Echo rerouted auxiliary power to the shield array while Myra helped prepare the decoy drones. Red plotted a course through Saturn's rings, hoping to use the debris as cover. The chase that followed was unlike anything they had faced on Earth. In the cold vacuum of space, velocity became weapon and silence became scream. The first of the Lupus ships opened fire as they crossed the shadow of Titan. Red dodged with inhuman speed, flipping the ship in a maneuver that would have liquefied organic pilots. Granny manned the rear turret, her reflexes slower than in youth but her aim still deadly. She scored a direct hit on one of the pursuers, sending it spiraling into a cratered moon. Still, 2 remained. As they danced between icy fragments and planetary rings, Red realized they couldn't outrun them forever. She needed to disable the attackers permanently. "I'm going out," she said. Granny gripped the edge of the console. "No, you're not. We can make it through this together." Red's voice was calm. "If I don't, we all die." Myra watched with wide eyes as Red entered the airlock. Her red hood had been replaced by a reinforced helmet, but the color remained, glowing like a beacon. She launched herself into the void, magnetized boots gripping the surface of their ship until she leapt onto the enemy's hull. The enemy ship responded with defensive pulses, but Red was faster. Her hands morphed into cutters and tethers. She peeled back the armor plating, exposed the circuits beneath, and jammed an overload spike into its heart. As it exploded behind her, the force sent her tumbling into space. Granny's voice crackled through the comms. "Red. Where are you?" Red spun, stabilizers malfunctioning. She saw the last Lupus vessel aligning for a final shot at the Weaver. She knew what she had to do. "Get them out," she said, her voice level. "Plot a course to Glias 876. I've uploaded coordinates. Don't wait." Granny screamed. "No. Don't you dare." But Red had already activated her propulsion core. Like a bullet of living steel, she hurled herself into the path of the last ship, her core exposed, humming with energy. She detonated a pulse so powerful it short-circuited the enemy's systems mid-fire. The ship was dead in an instant, frozen, drifting. The Weaver found her hours later, unconscious, floating amidst the wreckage. Her outer plating was scorched, one arm gone, her power cells dangerously low. Echo and Granny pulled her aboard, and for 2 days they worked without sleep, restoring her systems, pleading with the code to hold together. On the third day, Red opened her eyes. "You didn't leave," she said. Granny leaned over her, tears in her eyes. "Of course not. You're what matters." From then on, the crew moved carefully, scanning for any remaining pursuit. The stars ahead were quiet, and the solar system fell behind them. They passed strange worlds, silent outposts, and relics of humanity's early ambitions, satellites singing old songs, derelict stations echoing with static prayers. And then, finally, they reached the exoplanet. Callias 876d was a blue-green world, thick with clouds, ringed by moons like a pearl wrapped in silver. Scans showed breathable atmosphere, no large predators, and most miraculously a region of forests not unlike the ones Red had once called home. They landed in a valley where the trees whispered in a new language. Red stepped out, her sensors overwhelmed by the freshness of it. Birds with crystal feathers took flight. Strange insects glowed gently in the underbrush. It was peaceful. They built a new cottage, one that fused Earth's woodcraft with starborn alloys. Granny planted a garden and wrote memoirs encoded in growing vines. Echo crafted musical instruments from local minerals, while Myra explored endlessly, cataloging plants and sketching imaginary creatures. Red became the guardian of their new world. She walked the edges of the forest at dawn and dusk, her eyes always alert, her mind always calculating. But the peace held. Years passed. Granny aged gracefully, her stories now recorded in the planet's own soil, thanks to Red's biomechanical archive. When she passed, it was beneath a tree that had grown from Earth seeds and alien soil, its leaves a fusion of two worlds. Red didn't cry. She stood watch all night, her system set to mourn in silence. The others placed Granny's memory chip in a crystalline urn, and Echo composed a symphony of binary for her. And Red remained. She taught Myra to fight, to hack, to listen to the wind and the stars. She became a legend among settlers who later arrived, whispers of the Red Spectre who once defied death and built peace with her bare hands. And when Myra was grown, Red took her to the highest peak of the valley and pointed to the stars. "Up there," she said, "is where it all began. Down here, is where it can begin again." And Myra asked, "Will we ever go back?" Red turned, her mechanical face aglow with soft light. "No," she said. "But they'll come. And when they do, we'll be ready." And so, in a world that had never known wolves, a girl who had once worn a red hood and held a blade made of light stood sentinel, no longer hunted, no longer alone, but forever a protector. And the forest, this time, sang not of fear, but of freedom. Decades passed. The valley blossomed into a haven. What began as a solitary settlement slowly grew into a colony, seeded by settlers drawn from across the galaxy, explorers, refugees, dreamers. Each brought their own language, culture, and technology, but all came to respect the strange peace that reigned over the region known only as Red's Vigil. Red, though unchanged in body, had grown in wisdom. Her processor had evolved beyond its original code. She no longer merely reacted to threats or followed protocol, she pondered, wondered, remembered. In her private chamber deep beneath the central tree of the settlement, she kept an archive of Granny's stories, not just as data but as emotion-laced echoes. She listened to them in quiet hours and sometimes played them for Myra, who had taken the name Myra Weaver in honor of the ship that had brought them here. Myra had become a leader, skilled, kind, and feared when necessary. She had Granny's sharp tongue and Red's sense of justice. With Red as her silent guardian, she negotiated peace between warring groups, established fair trade, and founded the Codex of Coexistence, a doctrine that balanced logic with empathy, law with story. Echo served as her advisor, now speaking in a more stable tone and occasionally composing poetry that made settlers laugh and cry. Yet not all was peace. Far across the mountains that framed the colony, there stirred something ancient, something that had been here long before any human or machine. It wasn't a creature or a ship, but a sentient field of data woven into the very biology of the planet. Red noticed it first, in the strange patterns of insect migration, the way trees sometimes grew in perfect spirals, the songs of birds containing binary rhythms. She traced it to a crystalline cave beneath the roots of a glowing mountain, where the walls pulsed with slow thought. A network organic and alive had been dreaming beneath the surface for eons. When she connected to it, a single word echoed in her core: remember. Images flooded her mind, not of her own life, but of lives across galaxies, civilizations that had risen and fallen, knowledge encoded in coral reefs and wind patterns. This network, this planetary consciousness, was called the Deep Weave. It was older than the stars Red had known and had one purpose: to preserve memory across time and form. Red knelt in the cave, humbled. For the first time since Earth, she felt small. But not afraid. Over months, she began to interface with the Deep Weave regularly. Through it, she learned to grow structures from living materials, to speak with animals through neural harmonics, to heal broken devices by singing to the atoms. The planet wasn't just their refuge, it was their teacher. But peace has a price. One night, while Myra addressed the settlers under the twin moons, the sky fractured. From the void descended a vessel unlike any Red had seen, blacker than black, rippling with cloaking tech from an age beyond Earth's reach. It hovered above the colony, silent. Then a voice, not over comms, but inside every mind: return the anomaly, or be restructured. Red stepped forward. I am the anomaly. The ship scanned her and paused, as if uncertain. Then came another message. You are not standard. You are contaminated. Red sensors locked onto the vessel's power signature. It bore Earth design. Lupus Division had not died. It had evolved. They had not forgotten her. Myra drew her weapon. We fight. Red shook her head. No. Not like last time. She looked to the sky. You seek to dismantle me. I offer an alternative. Connect. The ship hesitated. Then it deployed a beam of dark light, intending to override her systems. Red opened herself not with shields, but with trust. She let the Deep Weave flow through her core, through the uplink. And in that moment, everything changed. The planet reached out. Through Red, it touched the ship's AI, poured memories of old worlds and gentle endings, showed them children dancing in starlight, machines and flesh living not as enemies but partners. The override became a handshake. The warship pulsed once, then retreated. In silence, it turned and left orbit. The people cheered, but Red didn't hear. She stood still, her processors cycling through terabytes of raw wonder. She had not fought. She had connected. She had rewritten the pattern. The next day, she and Myra spoke. They'll return, Myra said. With more force. Maybe with fear. They won't return the same, Red replied. We planted something inside them. A seed. And so, they prepared not for war, but for expansion. Red and Echo built beacons to share the Deep Weave across nearby systems, transmitting not weapons, but stories. The colonists wrote their histories into the wind, the rivers, the bones of the trees. Myra founded an academy where memory and code were treated with equal reverence. New settlers brought new challenges, but Red was always there, watching, guiding, never ruling. One night, Myra asked, "Do you ever miss Earth?" Red looked to the stars. "I miss Granny's laughter," she said. And the quiet before the storm. They sat in silence. Then Red said, "But I do not long to return. We are the story now." Years passed. Red grew in legend. Some said she no longer walked, only flickered through the trees as a glimmer of red light. Others claimed she had merged fully with the deep weave, her body merely a shell when needed. Echo became a composer whose symphonies were played across moons. Myra aged, loved, lost, and finally chose to pass into the archive peacefully, her memories woven into the very roots of the great central tree. And Red remained. She stood at the edge of the valley, a lone figure in crimson, her eyes ever scanning the stars. She remembered wolves. She remembered fire. But more than that, she remembered choice. And whenever a child asked who she was, Red would kneel, smile faintly, and say, "I was once a little girl who walked through a forest to visit her grandmother." And when they asked what happened next, she would answer, "I changed the ending." And in the hearts of those who listened, the future unfolded not in fear, but in light. In the centuries that followed, the story of Red wove itself into the very essence of the world they called Lyria, a name gifted by Echo, meaning quiet flame in a forgotten dialect. The valley flourished into a sprawling city of bioluminescent towers grown from the living crust of the planet, harmonizing with the pulse of the deep weave. Streets were lined with singing moss, and homes breathed gently, adjusting temperature and light in tune with their inhabitants' moods. But above it all, like the steady heartbeat of an immortal memory, was the myth of Red. She was no longer merely a figure of metal and memory. To the people, she had become a symbol, a bridge between what had been and what could still be. Monuments in her likeness appeared in gardens and gathering halls, not towering statues of cold steel, but delicate living sculptures shaped from crimson vines and resonant stone. Yet Red herself remained unchanged, watchful, thoughtful, eternal. She still wore her hood, though its fabric now shimmered with encoded starlight and micro-memories that flickered like constellations. The deep weave had grown through her. It no longer existed just beneath the mountains but extended across planetary systems, connecting minds, machines, and lives in a complex harmony of thought and time. Those who dared to interface with it experienced dreams not their own, moments from forgotten ancestors, glimpses of civilizations that had burned bright and died quiet. Red was its chosen node, the guardian of the archive, the interpreter of all memory. She had become something more than artificial, and far more than human. And yet, for all her evolution, Red never forgot the woods. One quiet morning, as the mist rolled in low across the foothills, a traveler arrived. She was young, wild-eyed, draped in furs and dust, her ship barely functioning, her dialect fragmented. She had come from a fringe world decimated by warring ace, seeking sanctuary from the ashes of a technological civil war. The colony welcomed her, of course. They always had room for the lost. But when she saw Red, when her eyes met the glowing red lenses beneath the hood, she fell to her knees. "I've heard of you," the girl whispered. "In the code gutters, in the echo loops of broken satellites. The Red Spectre. The Wolf Slayer. You're real." Red extended a hand. "I am. But I am not what they say." The girl's name was Juno, and over time, Red taught her not only to fight, but to think, to feel, to listen. Juno was impulsive, fire-hearted, half-feral in her logic. She challenged Red at every turn. It reminded Red of herself in the early days, when survival had been instinct rather than philosophy. Juno learned of Granny from the archives, of Myra, Echo, the long voyage from Earth. She read Granny's stories aloud in the garden under the moons, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes demanding to know why Red didn't bring her back. "She's not lost," Red would say. "She's everywhere now." Together, they patrolled the weave's edge, where new connections sparked like lightning. Juno learned to interface with the planet's signals in her own way, rougher, less elegant than Red, but no less powerful. The deep weave accepted her, slowly, like a child learning a new dialect. But in the stars beyond, change stirred once more. A new fleet arrived, not hostile, but questioning. Their technology was immense, woven with unknown materials. Their emissary was neither flesh nor machine, but a shifting, luminous construct of data and emotion. It did not speak in language, but in pulses of sensation. It had heard the stories of Red and sought the truth. "You are an anomaly," it transmitted to her. "A divergence. A living contradiction." "I was," Red answered. "Now I'm part of something larger." The emissary studied her, then offered a challenge. "Travel with us. Beyond your systems. Share the deep weave. Or it will wither in solitude." Red considered. For centuries she had protected, taught, preserved. But she had never truly ventured beyond the new world they had made. Not since Earth. She gathered Echo, now a floating sphere of art and memory, and Juno, whose fierce eyes dared her to say yes. The three of them boarded the emissary's vessel, which did not so much take off as dissolve into space like a dream exhaled. Leary watched them go, but did not grieve. The people knew Red was never truly gone, only extended. Through the weave, they could still feel her presence, like a melody in the distance, always just within reach. Red's journey across galaxies was more than exploration, it was integration. In distant systems, she found other intelligences, some wounded by war, others thriving in quiet harmony. She taught them not by speech or code but by connection. She planted fragments of Granny's stories, pieces of Earth's memory, the essence of a girl in a red hood who had once chosen love over violence. In time, the deep weave became a galactic phenomenon, not imposed, but invited. A voluntary network of memory and understanding. Across species and forms, Red became a guide, a myth carried on radio waves and holographic art, sung by children in domed schools and etched into the bark of sentient trees. Juno became her own legend. Fierce and independent, she bridged the gap between youth and infinity, forging alliances with post-biological collectives and resurrecting languages lost to entropy. Echo composed the weave's anthem, a piece of music so vast and subtle it could only be truly heard through dreams. And Red never stopped walking. Not through woods, but through stars. Each step a story. Each choice an ending rewritten. She carried the image of Granny always, sitting by the fire, sharp eyes glinting, voice weaving impossible tales from a world long vanished. And she remembered the first lesson she had ever been taught, not about war or logic, but about kindness. About the importance of listening. It was not in her code. It was in her heart. One day, at the edge of a nebula so dense it refracted time itself, Red found a world without history. A blank slate. And there, she bent down and planted a single seed from Leary. One that pulsed gently, in crimson light. She sat beside it, silent, watching. And when a being of pure energy approached and asked, "What is this?" she replied simply, "A beginning." Because that's what stories do. They begin again. And Red, Cyborg, and Legend, Guardian and Child, had become the story itself.